Welcome, everybody. It's time to start cruising into a better financial future with your host, Kim Cruz. Welcome, everybody, to Cruising into a Better Financial Future. I'm Adam Strum, and we're here with your host, Kim Cruz.
Hey, Adam. Good afternoon. Thank you so much. I am Kim Cruz. I am a wife, a mom, a daughter, sister, friend, entrepreneur, and business owner of Cruz Credit Consulting, but not necessarily in that order. I do have over 30 years experience in corporate America and a passion for helping people succeed in all areas of their life. I'm joined by my good friend, Adam Strum. He is the brains behind this production. He is a former corporate executive, the owner of Financial Rescuers, and co-owner of U.S. Financial Alliance, and a 20-year veteran of helping people get out of debt and improve their financial health. Together, we review our listeners' financial problems and address them with our experience, tips, tricks, and resources of network referrals to help you cruise into a better financial future.
Thank you for the intro, Kim. I'm Adam Strum. I'm the owner of Financial Rescuers, part owner of U.S. Financial Alliance, and the owner of On Target Strategies, my newest business consulting firm. Our usual guest that we had announced last week in our episode, Isa Israel, unfortunately is in the hospital and couldn't be with us today. And we wish him nothing but a speedy recovery and hope to have him on next week. Hopefully he'll be home and back and ready. But we are very, very lucky and honored to have a special guest with us this week who actually opened my first business, Debt Relief for You Incorporated, with me and has worked with me in the debt relief industry for a long time. He used to work as a food science person. He's been in corporate America for 20 plus years, traveled the country. We're honored to have our guest, Mr. Tom Doody, with us today.
Yes, thank you for joining us, Tom.
Tom, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Adam, I think you've said enough. The only addendum is the most relevant parts of my introduction for this call is, I would say, a variety of contributions to Adam's businesses over the years, and including settling one of Adam's first debts along with him. The only technology we had at the time was, I think, a shared cell phone. I think I did the negotiation on Adam's phone. We were outside. We might even have been VoIP with a laptop, and we were on a bench outside a laundromat because we were hopping on their Wi-Fi. And I think it was in Brooklyn. Am I right, Adam?
I remember this.
Yeah,
this
yeah.
was in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. It was a Bank of America account.
Right, and the client was Bernie. And it was one of those settlements that Adam could probably still brag about. It had some unique features that just, I think, got Adam salivating, and he can't seem to leave the industry even if he wanted to. So that was my first contribution to Adam's businesses. And then I did some marketing for him with modest success. I think marketing in this business is really difficult. The degree of difficulty is just high, frustrating for me. So I haven't done a lot of that. But probably the most pleasure and the most experience I had contributing to Adam's business would be middle-aged receptionist. When Adam moved from the East Coast to the great North American desert near Sky Harbor International, where he is now in Arizona, he had an interest in having his phone calls answered in the morning. So I did that, Adam, for more than a year, correct?
You did it for more than a year. And on that note, three people: Shirley from Minnesota, what's her name? Beverly from Florida, and one other. I'll have to look it up and call you later. All wanted me to tell you they wish you a happy holiday, a Merry Christmas, and a very happy
You can tell them the middle-aged receptionist is still alive and still where I was then. So anyways, that experience, because I was taking some calls before Adam was on the line. So as much as receptionist sounds like a down market title, I really did attempt to do a little bit more for the clients than what would be a more traditional limited roles of a receptionist. So anyways, that was probably my most relevant part of Adam's intro. Thanks, Adam.
Oh, no problem. In fact, you undersell yourself. Tom was a receptionist who actually had authorization to do anything the client needed. I consider him a partner in most of my businesses. All right. So that being said, let me go over today's format so that we're all ready. I have a very special news article of the week. We'll all make our comments about that. After that, we're going to go to 5 very special questions that we've received to our email, questions@cruisingintoabetterfinancialfuture.com. And just to plug that one more time, any of you listening to this podcast or watching our video on YouTube, if you have financial questions, any financial questions, investing, debt, buying a home, any type of financial question, feel free to send them into questions@cruisingintoabetterfinancialfuture.com, and we'll try to answer them on the air for you. We're going to answer 5 today, and we're going to have Tom help us answer them, as he was very influential. He used to help train new telemarketers and customer service reps in the debt relief industry. So we're going to be talking a lot about the debt relief industry today. But before we do that, let's get into today's news topic, because this is a doozy. It's a COVID-related news topic. CNBC is reporting that most banks are currently lowering credit limits arbitrarily on people's accounts in order to protect themselves from defaults. Now, this may not sound like a big problem, but when they do that, what they're doing effectively is causing your utilization rate, which is 30 to 40% of your credit score, to fly up, where you may have been very organized on a $5,000 credit card. You may keep your balance at $1,500 to be at optimal. Now, all of a sudden, they cut that to $2,500. You're using more than 50% of your credit, and your credit score could drop anywhere up to 100 points just from this arbitrary action. So we can start with Kim and then Tom, and I'll give a final word on it. But what are your thoughts on this practice?
Well, what's really interesting is that when you open up a credit card, the credit companies are responsible for, hey there, we have another guest.
This is wife of middle-aged receptionist.
Hello.
Hannah.
Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Hi, Hannah. It's good to see you. You look cold.
It's cold here. Yes, it is.
Now it's fine. Yes, it's cold.
All right. Well, we'll try to grin and bear it through this. Go ahead, Kim. Talk about the news article.
Well, I was noticing in that news article, interesting enough, this is a practice that went into effect at the beginning of the year. So it is affecting us in this pandemic, but it is not a result of the pandemic. It all depends on the risk of a borrower. So the credit companies, they're responsible for notifying you when there's any change to the terms of having a credit card, but they're not responsible for notifying you when they lower your credit limit. So like you mentioned, you can have $1,000 credit or credit limit, and you're utilizing 30% of that day in and day out. But if they drop that down to 50%, and now you have a $500 limit, it changes your utilization. So people will start to see a drop in their credit score, 50, 60, 70, 90 points. And that's actually what prompted this yesterday, a Facebook post that I saw, somebody asking, why did my credit score drop 90 points when nothing changed? Utilization will have a big effect on that, and the lenders lowering the credit limit.
The primary factor in your score. It's the number one thing that's weighed when calculating a credit score. Tom, do you have any opinion on this practice?
I'm going to compare credit score to Google's algorithms on search ranking. It is a mystery to me. And anyone who claims they're an expert, I listen to some questions. So forgive me, Kim, but that is the core of my question here. When you say, I'm not going to get back to the words, Kim, but you had a client, if I heard it right, I don't know, how many points did you say someone, their score was down by what? Was it 50 or
90?
500 or
points?
90. Okay, so you had someone that dropped, and when I hear you or any expert say cause and effect, what's happened? The score dropped 90. Why did it happen? For the reasons Adam described in the preface for this question. So my question to you is, I'm suspicious when I hear that. How do you know?
And
That's good
that's an
question.
excellent question. And I actually had a consultation with this young lady earlier this morning, and we talked about other things that have happened. It's not just one thing. We need to look at the big picture. First of all, where is she getting this information from? If she's getting it from Credit Karma, very possibly something that happened 3 to 4 months ago. If it just happened today and she received it off of Experian, is it a matter of your credit being, your utilization going up because of a result credit limit being lowered? Did she make a large purchase? Did she pay off a credit card? There's so many other factors that can play into a 90 score drop, not just one thing. So we need to look at the big picture and find out everything that's going on. What's the source of this information?
All right. So I agree with that. And my answer is pretty simple. And to find out why you dropped that much, it could be the utilization change, but it's likely more factors than that. We discussed what Tom said in an episode last week and the week before, that credit scores are a mystery to the people who actually hit the button to tabulate them. You found that out, Kim, when you called in to find out about your son's credit score. The woman who worked for Experian had no idea why. She just told you, if I remember correctly, well, the program tabulated his score, and that's what it is.
Correct.
And
She could not
felt bad
explain
about the
why.
fact that she couldn't explain why.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's terrible. But on that news topic, there's something incredibly and inherently unfair going on. Now, I understand the bank's needs to hedge itself so that it doesn't suffer incredible losses, and lowering of credit limits is one way to make sure that they don't have heavy default rates. But at the same time, the effect on people who have no fault whatsoever, seeing huge drops in credit scores, is wrong. And so before this practice began, there should have been some understanding that if a credit limit is lowered during the pandemic, that it should not affect the FICO scoring system or the Advanta scoring system or whichever scoring system is being used. They're all very similar, as we've gone over. So that's my 2 cents. I always stick my 2 cents into these things, but my 2 cents is if you're going to make that a practice in order to not have huge losses during the pandemic, that's fine. I get it. Many businesses are doing things they never thought they'd have to do. But you got to make sure to protect your customers while you're doing it. And that seems to be where they're lacking.
On that note,
Oh,
as
no,
a
wait, let me,
consumer,
Tim, forgive me. Can I interrupt?
Yes, Tom, go ahead.
yeah, absolutely.
Can you, just for conversation, this woman with the 90 points, could you just give her a name, a pseudonym? If
Katie.
Katie. So
Katie.
now, I assume there was some mystery in the information that Katie presented to you. But either with Katie or with some other client, do you ever have the smoking gun? In other words, relative to how Adam started this, the idea that banks have dropped the credit limit on specific cards or specific credit accounts, do you ever see a credit report before that happened? 2 months later, you get a credit report after, and you can put the numbers in the calculator and you're within like 5 points. There's nothing else that could have happened. You really know, or are you sort of guessing? And I don't mean guessing. I don't mean to downgrade your specialty, Kim, but there always seems to be a sense of professional estimate in this. And by my estimate, by my experience, that professional estimate has a very wide range.
You're absolutely right. I would like to say that this is a science, but it's not. And there are so many factors that can play into it. And there's really no way, and I am speaking from my experience speaking to a Experian representative on the phone, that there is no magical format that I can say, okay, because you had this inquiry, it dropped 4 points. Because you were late on this payment, it dropped 80 points. So there's no real calculation to say this is what caused a 90 point drop. However, these factors can contribute to that 90 point drop. So there's the overall big picture and factors that contribute to the increase, or does that
Right.
answer?
So Kim, have you ever with this COVID drop or any other drop, have you ever had clients that just call their credit card company and basically beg to return the credit limit to what it was, and then that's granted? I found that on some accounts that credit limit is sometimes can be very flexible. What's your experience with that?
Yes, absolutely. And that's actually what I was going to suggest. As a consumer, what action do we have or recommendation can we take to avoid that? And that would be my first recommendation. Contact that creditor and ask them, can you put this back to that limit? And like Adam has mentioned, banks and lenders are looking at the risks that they have right now in this whole pandemic situation. Obviously, the more credit somebody has, the more they're going to use. So banks are trying to limit their risk. And if they're seeing somebody that's not utilizing their credit, they may close that account for inactivity. That's happening right now as well, which we know will cause a drop in your credit score. They're also looking at lowering the credit limits. So that would be my number one course of action. Contact that creditor or lender and ask if they can put that back. Now, Adam, what's your take on that?
Yep. To answer Tom's question directly, Tom, it's a rare thing, but it does happen. And I'm sure Kim has had it happen. It's rare, but we are sometimes able to specifically identify on the credit report 2 months after another credit report why the score dropped or why, you know, something happened. It's rare, I'll admit it. There's a lot of mystery into the calculation of credit scores.
Right.
But there are times where we can see the specific reason. And if you know how to read a credit report properly, which of course, Tom, you do use to teach how to read a credit report to new representatives. So, you know, if you read it properly and you're able to compare it to one before the drop, there are times you can specifically identify why the drop occurred.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Adam.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Now we get to the fun part of the show. We're gonna answer 5 questions from 5 people who have emailed us in the past couple of weeks to the email address I gave earlier, and I'm going to give it again. Questions at Cruising Into a Better Financial Future. That's cruising with a Z, CRUZIN, cruising into a better financial future.com. And I'm going to let Kim throw the first question out. I'll answer it. Tom will get your opinion. We'll go back to Kim.
Awesome. Okay, the first question that we had in our email about this topic was from Harriet, Washington, D.C. And she asked, when is professional debt relief a good idea?
Okay, so when is professional debt relief a good idea? Professional debt relief is a good idea when you are overwhelmed or stressed about the amount you owe and are having trouble making your minimum payments or more. You should always be able to make a little bit more than your minimum payments. So if you're finding that you're spinning your wheels and you're making payments and your debt amount is not reducing itself and you're just basically going in circles, it's time to at least get a free consultation with a credit counselor of some kind. And there are many different types of debt relief. We've discussed bankruptcy at length in the show in the past. There's debt settlement, there's credit consolidation loans. Truthfully, we'll go over this at another point, but there are literally seven different ways to get yourself out of debt. And so you need someone who knows all 7 and the ins and outs of all 7 so that they can figure out which one is the best for your situation. And that's my direct
Adam, I lost you. If I were in a Zoom classroom, I would be scolded by my teacher. 7 what? I missed that.
There are 7 different ways that are proven methods to getting out of debt. There's a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. There's a consolidation loan. There's consumer credit counseling services. There's debt settlement. There's pay your bills. Just pay your bills until you're finished. That could take 30 years, but it's an option. And then there's the snowball effect, which is favored by people like Dave Ramsey, for instance. Those are the 7 methods that people normally take to get out of debt. Now, there are other methods, but they're not plannable ones. Like I inherited $20,000 from Aunt Gertrude. That could happen at any given moment. Or, I had a winning
or
lottery.
or lottery.
Right. I
Yeah,
had a
yeah,
winning
yeah.
lottery
Exactly.
ticket, or someone offered to buy my Ford Fusion for 5 times what it's worth. These are windfalls, and that doesn't count. But as far as structured
Right.
ways to get out of debt, there are only 7 that I know that work effectively. And so I don't want to get into the details of those. That's a whole show unto itself, the 7 methods of getting out of debt. But Tom, you're an expert at this. So why don't I pass the ball to you? When is it a good idea to consult a credit counselor? When is it a good idea to look into debt relief?
Well, talking to either of you on financial matters, don't wait till crisis. Have someone that you're talking to about money on an ongoing basis. Wouldn't it be nice to essentially talk to a psychologist when you're not feeling suicidal? Well, of course. The same is true for financial professionals. So that's one thing. People just don't want to talk about their finances unless they're killing it,
Well, Tom,
So that's one thing.
With your permission, I'm going to include a clip from your YouTube channel.
Okay,
having to do with fear and dread when you called about debt relief.
Right.
So if it's okay,
I know
with
which
you,
I know which one you're talking about. It's very old, but I know you like it. It's the mother-son thing, right?
Correct. If it's okay with you, I'm going to throw that in at this segment to accentuate what you were just saying.
Any telemarketer knows it's called a list that is overcalled. People not only are uncooperative and angry, but they begin blocking anything out. Again, a list that's overcalled when you're a telemarketer, that phone is ringing 10 times a night, and sometimes by the same call center. Now, this doesn't apply to my current situation because I'm a telemarketer working at home alone. But if you're in a call center and you're in a group of 10 people all calling the same leads, and those leads are overcalled, now you're calling the same people, many times in the night. In excess, it becomes illegal, and these people have reason to be angry. It gets so bad that if you begin to leave a voicemail, the answering machine gets unplugged, which I've always found funny. It's an act of defiance. Not only will I am angry about these high frequency calls, but it's so bad that I'm not even going to let you leave a voicemail. Now, this today was just the opposite. The answering machine got interrupted, but in this case, now all of a sudden I have the person. Now, many times in my history, that turns out to be a good call because the person actually was screening the calls and decided, I want to talk to that person, interrupts the answering machine, and begins a conversation. Oftentimes that advances through a series of phone calls. On occasion, those people will enroll, get themselves on their way to getting out of debt. So in this case, that's not what happened. The break in the answering machine was followed by a polite exchange. Hi, may I tell you why I'm calling? Yes. Debt. No, thank you. Click. And here's the last one, Holly. Now the noise that I'm going to make here is the sound of Holly's son. I'm on with Holly, and I'm Tom Doody. May I tell you why I'm calling? And it's going along just fine. Well, it turns out that the noise that followed debt was that of a son who was on a different phone line. So then the words were exchanged between this mother and son to try to get the son to hang up. At least that's what I thought was happening. And then it turns out both of them hung up. This noise, this guttural sound from a teenager seems to be a random event. That kid just happened to pick up after I said the word debt. Now, it couldn't possibly have done on cue at the mother's calling, but the timing was strange. Again, the word debt repeatedly in my phone work triggers reactions of panic, of dread, of horror. And this was a sound that described all of those feelings, but it was just a kid who picked up another phone. Now, granted, kids and their mothers tend to be really connected in ways that no one understands. So there's some kind of mysterious mother-son connection that might have been to work here. So maybe the kid was just expressing what his mother was feeling. Who knows? May I tell you why I'm calling? Yes, I do my rough introduction. Dad. Oh! From the teenager of Holly.
Right. That's a good point, Adam. That really captures what I'm saying. So hear this guttural noise come from the kid, and it really seemed to capture what his mother wasn't telling me, which was, oh my God, I got to end this phone call. I'm traumatized. And that emotional state is one that shouldn't be reached. People should be able to talk about their finances. So that's the one thing. So let me restate the question, make sure I'm still on track, Adam. And I think it was you that read it, Kim. The idea is, when do you call a professional?
Mm-hmm. Exactly, about debt relief.
So I sort of rehearsed this, and I even asked Hannah for the name of the cab driver, and we agreed we were going to call him Tony. Hannah and I were in suburban Portland, Maine, and that was this summer. This was 2020. We had this mishap with an Enterprise rental car, and so we actually had to take a taxi back from suburban Portland to the Portland airport to get a car because Enterprise wouldn't rent to us, and to continue on our direction to Arcadia State Arcadia National Forest. So the reason why I'm telling you that background is this story is based in reality, and it is a real conversation with a man just this summer. This is not archive, and this man is not fantasy. He did a home version, a DIY, an amateur version of debt relief, and he spoke of it with some pride, and it was beautiful. And if you could put yourself in Tony's head, even the two of you as professionals, you would say, oh my God, this is career ending, because nobody needs a professional. This guy did it so beautifully. Who needs people like Adam and Kim? So in the conversation, I came to understand that he not only owned his car, but he also drove it as a professional. So my point is, he didn't really own a full car. He had a car that he shared with his job. He rented an apartment, and he volunteered that. I wasn't inquiring at all. This was not a professional setting. So I knew he rented. I knew he kind of owned half of a car. His financial life was not big. And I was afraid, and I think Adam knows where I'm going on this, and Kim, if you were to take a guess, you would probably guess right. The point was this, is I had come to this information very much by chance, and I knew inside Tony's head, he was saying, oh my God, I'm charmed. Anyone can do this. He was a very charming man himself, and he could easily tell his next passengers, you can do it too. You know, and I'm going through what Adam's going through right now, like, oh, it works for Tony, but it doesn't work for everyone.
Correct.
So we got our luggage out. We're in the car park. We're in the car garage at the rental car. He took us right to the rental car spot. Our luggage is aside. Hannah is aside. And I went back to his window and I said, listen, Tony, I just want you to know that I've done this work as a professional over a couple of decades with a variety of contributions. And I just want you to know that what you did was perfect. There, as a professional, to be honest with you, nobody, unless they just wanted to make money off you, nobody would say you needed a professional. Your competence to do it yourself and your results were not luck. They were absolutely repetible. And so given your experience, you might think professionals aren't needed. But Tony, be careful the people you give advice to, because as soon as they have a bigger financial life, own their car, own multiple cars, own a house, now step it up even bigger beyond ordinary, which now they have a second house, a vacation house, and a boat, a timeshare. Do I have to continue, Adam? I know some of the clients you have really big financial lives, and they don't want to see this thing that looks like a tsunami hit their financial life. I said, Tony, be careful, because if you advise the same people to say, look how easy it is, their life can become a train wreck in a hurry. Now, I'm going to stop there because I know, Adam, you know where this is going. Yes, and Kim, you probably do too.
Tom, we have other questions that'll cover this in more detail. But let me just say this. There's an old saying, and it's a very true saying, that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. I'm a halfway decent plumber. I can fix most of the plumbing in my apartment without having to call building maintenance. Does it mean I should do it? Not necessarily. But I can. I'm competent. I can fix my dishwasher. I can make it drain properly. That's no problem. But, sometimes it's better to use the professional because, A, you're guaranteed a certain result. They know what they're doing. They know all the twists and turns it may take. And when it comes to debt relief, the professional you hire has no emotional attachment to the debt. And so they can just focus on getting you the best possible deal because they're not really worried about the threats of bad credit. It's not their credit on the line.
Exactly. And both of you have given such valuable information to this. And I love Tom's response when do you need professional debt relief? Before you need it, actually. You need to know all of your options before you get into a financial crisis. You need to know what your options are. And we'll go into more detail in a few of the other questions, but
Well, actually, I'm gonna throw out Jennifer in New York City because we just answered her question as part of question one.
yep.
So to Jennifer, I hope that this helped you. Your question was, I think I can do my own debt relief. Can I? So the answer is yes, you can, but it pays at minimum to get at least some advice from a professional before you attempt to do it yourself. And if it's not that expensive for you, a professional will always get you at least equal results, if not better than you can achieve yourself.
My answer would be it depends. It depends on what are we looking at. I had one young lady come to me with one credit card that she needed to settle. I'm not going to take that on as a case, but I will direct her as to how she can get that settled.
Of course.
So, and that kind of ties into the other one of the other questions that we have. But
Yeah, I'm about to throw out question two. So let me know when you're ready, and I'll hit you with question two, which is going to tie into exactly where you were just headed.
Yep, go right ahead.
Hey, Adam. Adam, before you start question two, I'm going to sign off in about 4 or 5 minutes. So I'll just drop off. But go ahead, and I'll stay for part of question two.
All right, Tom. I know that your time was limited. We really appreciate your being with us today. And if there's a chance of getting back on at some point, just try tapping. If you get to another location, you can rejoin. We'll gladly have you back on with us.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So question two, Tom, why don't you answer first on this since you're going to be leaving? This comes from Joseph here in Arizona, and he wants to know how to know if a debt relief company is a scam.
Well, you start with the bank. I think that's the very easiest thing to do. I've told people this before. I said, Adam, seems like this real easygoing guy, and he just talks to anyone in a drop of a hat. He's generous with his time, has a special degree of expertise and competence in this area. Boy, any indication that his bank, which is currently Reliant. So, the status of Reliant, these are traditional bankers, even though it's not a traditional bank. And I just know from experience dealing with you, if you've got a matter where I don't think anyone, including Suzanne, your wife, or me, or anyone else, I don't think anyone speaks with the force in your life more than Reliance. Right. So if Reliant's on the phone, Adam, you're going how soon? Now is the answer. So if the bank has a verified association with the credit, with the debt relief company that you're talking about, then you're probably fine because they are going to jump to satisfy the regulations, to keep their accounts open, to be able to do the work that they do for their clients because it's like a plumber. He or she cannot do any work without a wrench. Adam, I think it's true for Kim. I don't know enough about credit repairs, but certainly, Adam, you can't do the work for your clients without that bank, and you will jump through hoops and now to fix any problem you might have with them. So that's my answer. You start with the bank.
Makes sense, Kim?
Let's see. Which was the question that we're
answering Joseph in Arizona, who wants to know how to know if a debt relief company is a scam.
Okay. Some of our answers have covered many of these questions. So one of the red flags to me would be any money due up front. If you're going to go into a debt relief program and they ask you for an X amount of dollars up front or an X amount of dollars for a consultation, recommendation is to run the other way. It definitely has to be somebody that's knowledgeable and somebody you feel comfortable with. Those are probably the three biggest things that I would look for. Somebody that is explaining to you every step of the way what is going to be happening. Because if somebody tells you, oh, I can take care of it, just give me all of your accounts and be done with it. And by the way, I need a $3,000 deposit. That's not what you need. So those are the three things: feel comfortable, no money up front, and somebody that's giving you all of the options.
Okay, I'm going to expand on that just a little bit because this question, unfortunately for me, is a little self-serving. As I handle debt relief a lot for a lot of people. But to know if a company is a scam, there are a few things you want to do. First of all, Google the company. Find out how many people have put negative comments, negative experiences online about the company. Now, I've run 4 debt relief companies as CEO of them over the last 10 years. And all 4 of those companies have zero, count them, complaints online. 0 complaints. That says something. Because if you go to the big boys, whoever you want to say, I'm not naming company names because I don't want to get into legal battles with them, but they have hundreds of complaints, which means they're not taking care of their customer the way they should. Customers who come to USFA, who come to Financial Rescuers, any of the companies that I run, they get specifics about how their program is going to work. As far as upfront money, the company itself, the debt relief company itself, should charge no upfront fees. However, there could be external upfront fees that the company has no control over. For instance, one of my companies offers full legal coverage to protect you from lawsuits, and you have to pay for that starting right away so that you're covered legally from day one. It's not expensive. It's like $1 a day, $35 a month. But at the same time, there are certain fees that are understandable, but you shouldn't have any major enrollment fee. Enrollment should be free. You shouldn't have any debt settlement fee because no debt has been settled yet. We don't charge any upfront fees in the companies I have. Tom made a very good point. Are they working with one of the major banks in this industry? Because those banks are the police of the industry. We literally have to bow down and answer to them. They ask for all kinds of due diligence reports, and they double check settlements all the time because they're liable if they allow clients' money to be taken for a non-legal purpose. So Tom made a very good point there. I don't suggest you come to me unless you choose to come to me. But I do suggest you do your due diligence on the company that's talking to you and see how many people have had good experience, how many people have had bad experiences. When Tony was on a couple of weeks back, Tony Palella was on, we discussed the fact that anyone can have an A+ rating at the Better Business Bureau.
Right.
But the one thing you can't do at the Better Business Bureau is fake the comments. They have a system by which they verify all comments are made by actual people who've utilized the service. So if you try to fake it, you'll get caught by them. So don't worry about the rating, F, D, C, B-, A+. Don't worry about the rating. Read the comments from customers because those are verified by the BBB to be legitimate comments. And you'll find out about whether or not the company has treated people fairly and reasonably. Even if the client is complaining, there's a commercial out there. I forget what the product is, but there's a commercial out there where they have a guy doing a Yelp review. The guy at the restaurant told me to have a nice day. It's a horrible place. I'll have whatever day I feel like having. That's his complaint about the restaurant. So take the complaints with a grain of salt, but see if the company is responding to the complaints. That's more important than the complaint itself. Does the company take it to heart and want to resolve that complaint? That's more important than the actual problem because sometimes there's a misunderstanding between company and client. Maybe the client expected something that the company could not provide or vice versa. If a company ignores a complaint, run the other way as fast as you can. Companies that ignore complaints are either A, too big to care about the complainers, which means you're not going to get good customer service, or B, too ignorant to answer your complaint. And that being said, That's my number one way to tell if you're dealing with a scam. See what other people have found. See if the company that you're talking to can give you referrals of people who've completed their program.
Exactly.
I know I can
Referrals
do
are
that for
huge.
anyone. Yep,
Yep.
I
Yep.
can send people to graduates of my program, and I know I get rave reviews. We've had a couple of my graduates on already,
Mm-hmm. We
and
have.
we have another one coming up who happens to run a senior facility next
Mm-hmm.
month.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to talk about senior financial things, and so she runs a senior home,
Mm-hmm.
and she's going to be coming on to talk about the problems that seniors run into not properly financially planning for living in a senior living center.
Right.
So, that's how you know if it's a scam. You know it's a scam when they're not providing the proper service to their clients, or they're ignoring their clients simply to make more profits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Excellent input. Great responses to that answer. So thank you for that. And I know that that's valuable information for our listeners. Let me jump to the next question that we have from Rajman in North Carolina.
Let me put on my bulletproof vest and you can fire away.
Here we go. Ready?
Sure.
What, and you'll have excellent information here. What are all of my debt relief options and which is the best one?
Well, now there you go. I knew that would be coming up. Okay, so let's go over those debt relief options again. I mentioned them very quickly earlier, but I'm going to go into a teeny bit more detail. We're going to take a couple of minutes because it's kind of important to understand all the different possible options.
Definitely.
Now, when we're talking about debt relief, you've obviously hit a situation that I spoke of earlier. You're being stressed by the amount of debt you're carrying,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's struggling to meet your minimum payments, not being able to save toward retirement, not being able to pay your regular monthly bills. There's lots of reasons people start inquiring. I apologize for all the moving, but I got to get comfortable. So pretty much there are 7 methods that are used, and I'm going to go from one extreme to the other in these methods. So the first method is pay the debt. And that was used for over 150 years in this country. Just pay the debt. There were no bankruptcy laws in the beginning.
Right.
Bankruptcy didn't really exist very much, pre 1900. It was pay the debt or they come and take your property.
Mm-hmm.
Or we actually did in America at one time have debtors' prisons. You could be arrested and imprisoned for not paying your debts. So, back then it was a lot stricter than it is today. So pay your debt. Make your minimum payments. 20 years from now, hopefully you have it all paid off if you haven't used a single card in the 20 years. It's not a very effective method.
Right.
Because just paying your debt is what's stressing you out to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a method. So I wanted to get that out of the way first because it's the most obvious method there is. Pay your debt. If you could do that, the odds are you're not investigating your options.
Right.
But there we go. Now we'll get into the next method recommended by the very high up financial people in the world, the Susie Ormans and the Dave Ramseys of the world, who tailor everything to the ultra billionaires, the snowball method.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful thing if you can afford to do it because it works beautifully and gets you out of debt rather rapidly. But it involves ignoring the fact, as we've discussed in previous shows, that life happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's not taken into account. So basically what they say is total up what your minimum payments are every month. Right. And once you know that total, let's say your minimum payments are $500 a month on all your credit cards. Once you know that total, you want to add $100 to it. Mm-hmm. So you now have $600. And that whole $100 extra goes to the smallest balance card. So you pay all of them, you pay the minimum payment on every card, plus 100 to the smallest card, allowing you to pay that card off quickest, or that loan or that credit account off the quickest. Once that account is paid off, that wall remains in place. Until you're out of debt, you're going to be paying $600 a month to your creditors. So the snowball effect works like this. You started with just adding $100 to the minimum payment of the smallest card. Mm-hmm. Let's say the smallest card had a minimum payment of $70. Now you're paying $170. Within 6 months to a year, you're likely to be out of debt on that card. You've been making your minimum payments on all your other cards. Now you're going to take that $170 and you're going to add it to the minimum payment for the second lowest
Right.
balance, allowing you to pay that one off in just a few months
Mhm.
to a year. Then you're going to take the money that you were paying there. Let's say now we're up to 270, and you're going to add that whole 270 into your minimum payment for the next highest card. And you keep the snowball growing bigger and bigger so that when you get to your biggest balance card, you're paying the whole 600 a month toward it, where you used to pay 110, and you blink a few times and it's paid off. And it's beautiful if you're able to wall off $600 in order to get the ball rolling. See, that's the problem, is getting the first snowball rolling. And
Mhm.
it doesn't work for most Americans. As we know, it's been widely reported by every financial newspaper out there. Most Americans can't afford a surprise $400 bill. So there's no way they have the extra money laying around to double up the minimum payment on their smallest card to get the first snowball rolling. And there's no guarantee that every month they'll be able to meet the criteria to keep the snowball rolling. And if at any point that snowball stops, it goes from the big new size back to the
Mhm.
little pebble, and you got to
Mhm.
start all over again. And so
Exactly.
it's a very haphazard method. It does work. I will not say it doesn't work. It works beautifully if you can adhere to its rules.
Right. Right.
All right, so that's two methods. Let's go to the third. The third method is consumer credit counseling services, most of which are nonprofit organizations. And
Mhm.
they are wonderful organizations, and they do really care about you and your credit and getting you back on financial footing.
Mhm.
That being said, they're also owned by the banks,
Mhm.
and they have to file with their secretaries of state in whatever state they're in as though they are a financial institution, which means that your interest comes second to the bank's interest.
Mhm.
Most of them, the best that they can do is get you a slightly lowered interest rate and try to get you paid off within 5 years.
Right.
They now have expanded that to 10-year programs because our economy is where it is, but they're not going to be ultra effective. They will be effective at not hurting your credit score, but your credit worthiness, as we've discussed many times, is not just your score. Your credit worthiness is going to plummet.
Yes. And people don't realize that going into credit counseling. Yes.
So, credit counseling, although it is good for some people, it is the perfect fit for some people. Just like we discussed Chapter 13 bankruptcy, it's the perfect fit for some people. Very few people is it the perfect fit for. But
Right.
it is a net that catches all the people into it that don't know their other options. And that's unfortunate in some ways because there are better options for most people.
Mhm.
So that now we've covered, I believe, four,
Four,
right?
I think.
So
I think
far
we're on four.
we've pay it off, snowball effect, consumer credit counseling services. Oh, we've only
So that
covered
was
three.
three. That was three.
So let's go to number 4, a consolidation loan. The miracle of trading your debt for a new debt.
Mhm.
It doesn't make a lot of sense, number one. Number two, there are very big pitfalls involved in consolidation loans. First of all, credit card debt, which is what we talk about most here. Credit
Mhm.
card debt is unsecured debt. Can you be sued? Can they garnish your wages? Yes, of course. But it's still unsecured debt. The bank knew it was taking a risk when it gave you the credit card. And
Right.
it's revolving, and they will work with you a lot to get you back on footing to keep that revolving door going. Once you take a cash loan, that's not revolving. Now it's a fixed unsecured debt, or possibly even worse, a secured debt. Because in order to get the loan, the cash loan to pay off your credit cards, you may have had to put up collateral.
Mhm.
Now, when you miss a payment, something you own is being risked.
Right.
Whereas if you miss a payment with a credit card, your major risk is 300 phone calls
Mhm.
and some nasty letters and maybe a nasty email or two,
Right.
which all can be handled in multiple ways. I won't get into that. That's something else. But I would never recommend this method. Some people swear by it, and I love the fact that they swear by it because usually it's 3 to 6 months down the road when life happens, like I say all the time.
Life happens.
They're going to call me up and say, I missed a payment on my consolidation loan and my credit just went to 410. Yeah, well, that you just put all your eggs in one basket. And if that basket breaks, you're kind of screwed.
Right.
So I don't recommend it, but a debt consolidation loan is number 4. So that leaves us 3 other methods of getting out of debt. The next method is a 2-layered method, bankruptcy, the nuclear weapon of the get out of debt world. Chapter 7 bankruptcy, if you qualify, recommended. Chapter 13 bankruptcy, if you qualify, not recommended. As a last resort, the only reason I've spoken to lawyers about this, actual bankruptcy attorneys, and off the record, I won't name them, although one of them will be our guest in the very near future. He doesn't recommend a Chapter 13 to anyone unless they're about to lose their home. Because in the restructuring, they get to reset their mortgage payments through the court. And it's the only thing that stops the bank from foreclosing. So in that case, a Chapter 13 is probably a good fit.
And we have a whole episode on
Yes, you can refer to our bankruptcy episode to find out why we don't recommend Chapter 13. We discussed it at length with someone who's been through a Chapter 7 bankruptcy.
Right.
So now we're at 6 because bankruptcy was multi-layered. Then comes the 7th, the one that I work in. I saved it for last, and I'm going to emphatically let you know that I do believe, and the reason why I work in the field, because I could easily go work for a bankruptcy attorney and work in that field, and consumer credit counseling agencies have asked me to come in as vice president, and I don't want to work for them. I don't believe in their method. I don't think it's the best way to get out from underneath. So I work in the field that I work in because I believe it's the best method for most people. There are some people where a bankruptcy is definitely the better method. There are some people where the snowball effect will work beautifully. There are some people, but they're small percentages. So when you look at your pie graph, these are all little sliver slices. And then you have like the 65 to 70% that all fall into the debt negotiation world. Debt negotiation may or may not affect your credit horribly. But it will do it for a much shorter period of time than, say, a bankruptcy will. So yes, your credit score is going to plummet. Your credit worthiness for a short period of time will plummet with it. We call this taking a step back so you can take 2 forward. Because as these debts are settled and you save thousands of dollars on each, and you get a monthly payment that you can actually afford, and no fees are paid until the work is done, you're risking very, very little in order to take a huge financial leap forward at the end of a short program, 2 to 3 years. A bankruptcy affects you for 7 to 10. Consumer credit counseling, 5 to 10. The snowball effect could take up to 3 years for those who can afford it. But they're not saving any money. They're paying their cards in full. You're getting the same benefit of the snowball effect without the snowball, without risking resetting if you miss a payment, because your company, if they're a good company, if you choose a good company, is going to prevent a missed payment from wrecking your program. So debt negotiation takes a debt of, say, $10,000 with Bank A, so I don't name anybody. It takes that debt and says, hey, the client can't afford to pay it. They're not sleeping. They're spinning their wheels. They're never going to be out of debt. They'd like to negotiate a settlement on this. And that settlement on 10 will usually be somewhere in the neighborhood of 5, maybe 6. But either way, you're paying no more interest, which is where all your money's going most of the time. And you're paying 30 to 40% less than what you owed originally. So you're saving off the front end and you're saving off the back end. You're saving twice on every account. It's almost a no-brainer that it's the best method, provided you're willing to do the work of rebuilding your credit when you're finished, because it will hurt your credit. There's a whole list of disclaimers that are required. It's 14 of them required by federal law when you enter a debt negotiation, a debt settlement, whatever you want to call it, program. And those disclaimers are tough. When we settle a debt, you get taxed on the forgiven amount. That's a disclaimer. Now, there's ways around that. Of course, there are IRS forms you can file that can get that tax dismissed. But that's up to your agent, your company, to let you know. So those are the 7 methods of getting out of debt that we named earlier, and why I believe and why I work in the industry I work in, that the method I use and the method my company espouses is the best method for getting out of debt for most people. Now, don't laugh. But on a weekly basis, I speak to 20 or 30 people, and about 6 or 7 of them, I tell them no. They want what I have. They want my service, and I tell them no because it's not the best thing for them. I'll recommend them to a bankruptcy attorney because I think bankruptcy will get them where they need to be faster, or they're losing their home, and I can't prevent a home from being taken, but a Chapter 13 can. Or there are cases where they make more money than they should. They don't really have a hardship, and if there's no hardship, we don't take that client. And for free, I'll help them organize the snowball method. We do this all the time. Isa does it. I do it. Everyone at USFA does it.
I do it. Yeah.
I know you do it.
Yeah.
So, it's a long-winded answer, and I apologize for eating up so much time, but it's the most specific answer I can give to Raj in North Carolina. I appreciate the question because it really is important to understand all of your options so that you know which one really will work the best for you.
Exactly. And I love that we have you. The information that you gave is so valuable because people don't know this. And this just lends to the fact of why we do this. We do this because there is so much information out there that people don't know. They don't know the options that they have. And I know we're going to get so many views on this because this is information that people lay awake at night, not knowing where to turn. They don't know that these things are available for them.
Or they've been told misinformation about them, like, oh, don't believe anybody who says the word debt negotiation or debt settlement. That's all a scam. It never works. Well, I have 4,842 clients who've graduated since I started in this. And those 4,842 clients will refute that. So the fact is, it does work. It works for people who allow it to work. It doesn't work for people who intervene in the process. That's the number one thing. There were, Kim, I'll let you go, I promise, but there were congressional hearings about this industry back in 2010 when they came out with the telemarketing sales rule in order to prevent debt settlement companies from scamming people. And I watched as person after person testified about the horror they went through with their debt settlement companies. And there was a constant recurring theme, and it was very unfair to us in the debt settlement industry. And here's why. Customers will come into this and they'll get a monthly payment of, say, $400, $500 a month on $25,000 worth of debt. They're in a 3-year program, which means it's going to take 3 years for your debts to all be paid off. They'll make their first payment of $500 and then inundate us with emails and calls. Is everything settled yet? No, you've made a payment of $500. If you look in your bank account at Reliant, which I named earlier, there's $467 in there. Your legal coverage was paid for. Everything else is still there. We haven't taken a single dollar. But we can't go to your bank, Bank A, and say, that $10,000 that Mrs. Smith owes you, we'd like to offer $1.50. That's not going to work. We have to have a reasonable amount to make an offer. And that's not going to happen in 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. It's going to take 6 months.
Right.
Maybe even a year. You're in a 3-year program. And if you try to rush it, or if you think things should happen on your schedule, you're going to fail at your debt settlement program. And that's what the testimony in Congress was all about. Well, I paid them $800 a month for a whole year and nothing got done. Yeah. What were your creditors? Well, I had Citibank and Chase, and Chase won't even discuss settlement until you're 6 months delinquent. They won't even discuss it. They won't entertain it at all. Citibank is even worse. They want 8 months delinquent before they'll discuss settlement. Excuse me. Some banks will not discuss settlement until it goes out to a collection agency. That could take a year. So yeah, nothing happened doesn't mean nothing will happen.
Right. Well, this leads into our next question with Tara in Idaho. And she actually works for debt relief. Potatoes.
You say potato, I say potato, you say tomato. Let's call the whole thing off.
She works for a debt relief provider, and she finds that people are scared to do debt relief. And she wants to know why. And you've alluded to why some people are afraid to do it. And here's one that you and I have talked about outside of our podcast, is that people will say, but you're making money off, the debt relief companies are making money off of my debt relief program. What's your answer to that? And I know what your answer is, but explain that to me.
I'm not a millionaire is my answer. I have bills to pay just like you do. The bank is making a lot more money off your interest than I'll ever make on your debt relief. Are you angry at the bank for making their money on the interest? That's my question right there. That's my standard answer is you're okay paying your bank twice what you borrowed, but you're not okay paying us a fraction of what we're going to settle for.
Exactly. And if they do nothing, it's going to cost them X amount of dollars.
Correct.
If they sign up with the debt relief
promise
program.
To start off next week's podcast, I'm going to bring several letters of settlement, redacted so that the names are not visible. Okay. But I'm going to bring them and show you what I mean. So you'll see a $14,000 Discover card settle for $6,000. And you'll see a Bank of America for 19 settle for $6. You'll see a Chase for 25 settle for $3,000. These are possible. These happen all the time in this industry. It's not to say that that will happen for you. No two cases are identical. It depends on your hardship. It depends on your zip code. It depends on your employment status. It depends on about 100 other factors that we as debt negotiation people all weigh into the settlement amounts. And the bank weighs them in as well, or the lawyers representing or the collection agents representing the bank weigh all these factors in as well. So, no two are the same. I give this example quite often. I had two brothers, Chad and Tad. Now, Chad and Tad were born 30 seconds apart. They're identical twins.
Okay.
Chad and Tad have been in the same classroom every single year all the way through graduating college, where they both graduated with the exact same grade point average. They both studied economics, and they both have a degree in economics, and they both go to work for the same company, Economics R Us, and they both have the same salary. They look alike. They live in the same house. They split it with tape down the middle. They both have the same amount of space. Everything about Tad and Chad is identical, including their DNA. Everything is identical. And they both have a Chase card, and both of those Chase cards are $1,000. Chad settles for $275. Tad settles for $412. Why? Because every negotiation is different. Even if the circumstances are identical, you won't get the same result.
You mean there's not an algorithm that goes with it?
No, there's no algorithm. Every
kidding.
negotiation is completely separate from every other negotiation. No two are the same. However, there are some cases where that's not true. So I don't want to ever be called a liar. There are certain collection agencies that we make a blanket deal with on behalf of our clients. So I won't name the collection agency. We'll just call them Collector A. Collector A says anytime that my company, Financial Rescuers, calls them up with a client, they'll definitely give us 40% and up to 12 payments to pay it off. Every time. So I don't even have to think about that. It's not even a negotiation. It's an email. Such and such is our client. Here's the power of attorney showing that they're our client. We'd like 40% in 12 months as usual. And they send back a letter typed out saying, here's the payment plan in 12 months to pay off the debt. So there are some standards, but that's not a negotiation. If a negotiation is going to occur, there's no guarantee as to how it will end.
And it seems to me that it's all a balancing act, because we want to help our clients settle their debt that they have because it's overwhelming and they can't make their minimum payments or a little bit more than their minimum payment. So they're overextended because life happens. But on the other hand, we have this credit issue that we know that their credit's going to plummet, but people don't understand that they're afraid to sign up for a debt relief program because their credit is going to suffer. But if they do nothing and they can't make their minimum payments, their credit is
going
still going to suffer. So,
all right. I was a member many years ago of IAPDA. That is the International Association of Professional Debt Arbitrators.
Okay.
You can look it up online, IAPDA. I have let my membership lapse because I no longer need them. I now work directly for attorneys, and I work under the umbrella of attorneys in 40 some odd states.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was independent and didn't work for attorneys, I had certification from the International Association of Professional Debt Arbitrators. I passed their exam and was licensed through them to arbitrate debt, to negotiate debt. A good debt negotiator, anyone trained properly, is looking for not just the best for their client, but the best for three different entities:
Mm-hmm.
the bank, the client, and the company.
Mm-hmm.
All three have to do well in every negotiation. If one does well while the others don't, then something's wrong with the way the debt was negotiated. Here's an example, Kim. If you had a Wells Fargo credit card, and I'm naming the bank, Wells Fargo, you have a Wells Fargo credit card and you owe $5,000 on it, and you've lost your job and there's just no way you can ever see your way to paying the $5,000. And you come to me with just the one debt and I say, I'll be willing to help you. Here's here's what the fee will be once it's settled, et cetera, because that's what we do for single debts. Is we don't even have a elongated contract, and we don't have a bank that you have to save up monthly payments, and it's one debt. So we'll organize it and let you pay the settlement. But being that you have this Wells Fargo credit card for $5,000, I immediately, after getting your information, sit down and say, okay, Kim needs this debt down to $3,000 or less, and she needs at least 10 payments. She can afford $300 a month. Wells Fargo is currently losing the interest on this card because you're not making any payments, and they may have to spend up to $1,000 to a collection agency to collect it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, my company needs to keep the lights on so that the rest of the room doesn't look like this black background behind me. So there's the three outcomes I need. I need my company to make money, not necessarily a lot, but we have to make money on every client because we're working, we're spending time, and time is money.
Mm-hmm.
The bank needs this resolved because they don't want to have to spend more to collect less. And you need it resolved so you can move on with your financial life. So I get on with Wells Fargo and I managed to get them to $2,500. Now, Wells Fargo wouldn't settle for $2,500 unless it was in their interest to do so. They're not forced to. No bank is forced to settle a debt unless a judge declares it. And judge only declares that in a bankruptcy.
Right.
Otherwise, they don't.
They don't get involved. Right.
Yes, they won't get involved unless it's a bankruptcy or a lawsuit against you, but that'll be for the full amount. And it has happened a few times, but it's incredibly rare that a judge will reduce the debt amount that the creditor is suing for during your case.
Right.
And that's so rare. You're probably going to find a unicorn before you find a case like that. That being said, so the bank is getting what they want. They said they'd agree to $2,500. They wouldn't have agreed to that unless it suits their purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And Kim, you're paying $2,500 on $5,000. You saved $2,500, and you're going to be out of debt in just 10 months, 10 payments.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And you're going to pay us X amount between $200 and $500 for the work we did. Even after paying us, you still saved over $2,000. The bank got what it needed. You got what you needed. The company made a profit.
Right.
All three entities always have to be happy with the outcome, or you're not a very good debt negotiator.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whew.
Excellent explanation, though. And I think this whole segment has been very easy to understand. And I think we explained the process, the different outcomes, the different options. I think it's been done in a very easy to understand format. And I am so glad that we did this at the end of the year so that we give our audience a fresh start at the beginning of the year, and they know some options that they can take to get themselves out of debt. The economy right now is...
What economy?
Yeah. And I shouldn't even say the economy. People's financial situations are in disarray right now, and they don't know where to turn. They don't know that there are options available. I'm positive there are many, many, many people having sleepless nights over how they are going to pay their bills.
If I can, I want to clarify something. And You know, people get confused when they hear the word. Here, let me start. I'm gonna play a little game here.
Okay.
Okay, climate and weather, they're
Mhm.
different.
Yes, they are.
And yesterday, in your own personal life, you saw that difference come to life
Yes.
when in the outskirts of LA, Los Angeles County, you had hail and snow
Mhm.
for the first time in what is it, 132 years or something like that?
Something like that.
Climate takes into account a lot more than weather. Weather is what's happening right now.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
weather outside is frightful. The fire is so delightful. Okay,
Yes.
so weather is right now, climate is overall.
Mhm. Right.
Finances are right now, economics is overall.
Excellent analogy.
Thank you very, very much. I know you had no clue I was going there.
Where are you going?
We talk about the economy all the time, and most people, the minute you say the word economy, you can see the blank stare in their face because they have no clue what that means.
Mhm.
To them, that means, oh, I made a lot of money. No, everybody could be flat broke and we could have a great economy,
Mhm.
which is what's been happening, actually. We have a stock market that rises despite jobless numbers off the charts.
Mhm.
We have a stock market that rises despite half of the businesses I know either on cutback hours or no hours.
Mhm.
So the economy, which to an onlooker from the outside looks wonderful, the market is up 6,000 points in the past year and a half.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's great for the 1% of Americans who have their money all invested in stocks. The other 99% are like, so I
Mhm.
can't find a job anywhere, and I just got laid off for the fourth time this year.
Right. Right.
Finances and economics, though, are entangled in one another. And we're going to do, you and I, a special coming up right after mid January. We're going to tape a separate show, and we're going to call it Understanding Economics.
I
Because
think
you're
that'd
always talking
be.
about how that's not really taught in school anymore. And although they do teach superfluous economics, and a good comedian and a person I respect a lot, Lewis Black, does a great little segment on this. He goes, just build a big thing. Just build it, have the government build a big thing anywhere in the most depressed area you can find.
Mhm.
When you build this big thing, you have to hire people to keep the big thing clean. And then you sell tickets to people to come see the big thing.
Mhm.
So you have the ticket person, they're making a money now. And then, of course, you have all the people that explain the big thing and make sure the big thing is safe. You have security guards, you have maintenance workers, you have all these people that end up with jobs because you built the big thing.
Right.
That's economy, not finance.
Right.
Finance is, can I afford a ticket to go see the big thing?
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's, people have to learn the difference between the two and not just turn off when they hear the word economy, because economy has become meaningless from 1980 to present, because the economy and the finances of people have not met in the middle anymore. They did for 150 years before 1980,
Mhm.
but everything changed in 1980. The way salaries matched the cost of living changed. Everything changed. Our entire tax structure changed like it had never changed before.
Mhm.
Many people wouldn't know this, but in the 1950s, the top marginal tax rate was 91%. Not 29, not 32, not 30, 91%. That's the top rate. Now, a lot of people don't even know how their taxes work. The
Correct.
first $10,000 you earn, not a penny is taken out for that.
Mhm. Mhm.
The next 5,000 you earn, they take out 3% at the most. No
Mhm.
matter how much you earn for the year, that's all they take out of that next 5. Then out of the next 10 to 25,000, they take out 7%, and it keeps going up. So the people paying 91% only paid 91% on all the money they earned over $600,000
Mhm.
back in the 50s. 600,000 in the 50s would be equal to about 5.5 million today, give or take.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to explain how I get that number, but it's a calculation in my head. But 5.5 million, that means your first 5.5 million was not taxed at 91. But every dollar after
After
five
that.
and a half million was taxed at 91%. That's
Mhm.
what marginal tax rates are. They apply only to money after a certain amount of earnings.
Mhm.
So we weren't saying that somebody who earns $1 million should pay 991,000 of it to taxes.
Right.
No, but everything after 5.5 million brings them down to maybe they made 12 million for the year.
Mhm.
And so, you know, it was still that they're never going to have to worry about money. Obviously, these people who
Mhm.
paid the 91 had not a care in the world about money. And there weren't very many complaints either. It was just understood that that was how we made America thrive,
Mhm.
by
Mhm.
giving back in a country where, and this is not political, so I know I'm going to get political comments on this. This has nothing to do with red, blue, conservative, independent, Democrat, has nothing to do with any of that. It's a fact. If you built a business, it wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the police and the fire department and the people who built the roads and the bridges and the people who tilled the land that your business is built on. And the people is where it's the first thing, the first three words of the US Constitution: we
We
the
the
people.
people.
We the people. Everything under that, every word of that Constitution under that is because we the people grant it.
Right.
You wouldn't own Cruise Credit Consulting. I wouldn't
Correct.
own Financial Rescuers and USFA if it wasn't for we the people.
Mhm.
The people allow me to have this business.
Mhm.
When you hear a court case, it's the people versus whoever,
Mhm.
you know, and we're defended by the Justice Department, who represents the people. And until people understand it's not political, I had an argument with someone earlier today about this. When the taxes are higher on people's whose earnings are much higher,
Mhm.
it's happened. It's happened for over 100 years. The average rate for the richest among us was 70% until 1980.
Mhm.
It was rarely ever below that. And we thrived as a nation.
Mhm.
Heck, during the 50s, when it was 90 and 91%, we saw the greatest economic growth in this country's history.
Mhm.
In this country's history, and taxes were at their highest ever.
Mhm.
Taxes do not depress an economy. That's not how it works. It depends on what those taxes are used for. Are those taxes making more roads, allowing more transportation and more free trade? Well, then those taxes are going to be valuable to businesses, all businesses. Are those taxes being used for something else, like finding out the effects of lipstick on a whale? Okay, which is something that we spent tax dollars on. Now, people would say, oh, that's pork spending. I'm so against that. Actually, you know, your grandmother who got chemotherapy and was cured of her cancer because of it, that's because of that study of lipstick on a whale.
Right.
So stop knocking pork. Pork spending is not pork spending. It's spending that you may not comprehend the full scope of. But we literally do not flush money down the toilet. There's a reason behind every dollar that's expended.
Right.
It may not be the best reason to us personally, but there is a reason. And if you follow the reasoning out to its conclusion, you'll find it's not as bad as people think it is. So
And that's just it.
we really need together on a special program to explain what economics is in relation to finance, so people can truly cruise into a better financial future, understanding and not shutting their brain off the minute they hear the word, oh, the economy. It's a pet peeve of mine, because I'll tell them the economy is actually doing terrible. And they're like, no, it's great. The stock market's at 30 and there's more billionaires in America than there's ever been. And I'm like, that's the worst thing that could happen to the economy.
And Adam, you do such a great job of explaining all of this in easy to understand terms and analogies. So I
Thank you.
know that our audience is benefiting from what we have. And that's exactly why we do what we do. We do this so that we can give our audience information, knowledge, our tips and tricks, and all of our resources that we have available to help them, like you said, cruise
just
into a
don't
better
want-
financial future.
Right. I just don't want people to be so confused all the time, because you'll hear newscasters from every news network, and I'm not picking anyone out. I don't care if it's Fox, MSNBC, CNN, OAN, BPN, TDY. Just put three letters together and call it a
And
news
it's,
network.
yeah,
It doesn't matter where it's coming from. You always hear the words, oh, and the economy. It's all about the economy, stupid. But the people don't even know what the economy is. They equate it to one thing when it's 1,000 things.
And I love that you differentiate finances and economy. And you're absolutely right. They're two totally separate things. And we help people with their finances, not
Correct.
with what's going on in the economy. So,
Economically, correct.
right,
Although we can help them with their household economics,
yes, exactly.
budgeting, basically.
Right.
And that's what's so funny. If you really want to just understand the difference as the kindergarten way of understanding economics versus finance, your car payment every month is finance.
Right.
Your budget for the amount of money coming into your house and the amount of money you're spending on everything is economics.
Perfect.
That's the difference between the two.
Perfect explanation. So,
And it's not hard. It sounds hard. It's really not hard. I promise you, you don't need a doctorate to get it. I know
you're
people
my
who
walking
graduated high school and
encyclopedia.
understand it better than me. But
But
you know, it's just it is what it is.
Yeah.
I have to give a shout out right here. I want to say I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas, and I hope they had a safe Christmas, a socially distanced Christmas. I also have to put up our disclaimer. Nothing in our show constitutes legal advice. I am not an attorney. Kim is not an attorney. We are experts in our field and we do give expert advice, but it is not to be misconstrued as legal advice.
Thank you for that, Adam. I appreciate it. And as well, our audience appreciates that. I'd like to thank Tom for being our guest today.
I wish he could have stayed.
I know.
He's so much fun to talk to because he just analyzes everything down to this. He's a scientist. And so he uses that scientific method on finance in a way that just blows my mind sometimes. Like to him, he knows that the credit report's a mystery and the score, you know, based on the credit report, the scores, and the way he put it out there is like, is there ever a time where you can pinpoint what caused the score? Truth is, yes, but it's rare.
Exactly. And then the snippet that we have from him, that's priceless.
He's done a lot of cold calling on debt. And the reaction, this still answers the last question, by the way. The reaction of people most of the time is just, it's insane. You call them up even though you know because they've qualified or they requested information about debt relief. And you call and you go, hi, I have your request for information about debt relief. I don't need any debt relief. Go away. Click. That's the number one response we hear.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get an email 2 days later from them again from the website where they're inquiring again.
Yep.
I don't know how they want us to get the information to them. We call them to give them the information they're requesting. But the minute they hear the words debt relief, something in them just snaps. I come from a customer service background. So even the people that you've referred, and you've referred a bunch of people to me, I've referred a few people to you. The people you refer to me will always come back to you and say, he took his time and listened to everything. Yeah, because I truly believe that you don't sell.
I agree with you 1,000%. Yes.
If I want a car, I go on the lot, I find the car I want, then I find a salesman, and I say, I want this one.
I love that you bring that up because I would love to, a small snippet, which would be a great teaser, is the lady that I spoke to this morning. She went in to buy a car. She knew what her credit score was before she went in to buy her car. It was a 630. Not great, not horrible, but she knew that it was 630. Finance manager comes out and talks to her and says, we're going to put you in this loan for somebody because your credit score is 570. So she knew going in what her credit score was, but she allowed them to put her into a finance for somebody that had a credit score of 570. So she's upset with them.
She's going to pay an extra 6% interest. Yep.
Exactly. Rightfully so. So the lesson learned here is know your credit score so that you can negotiate your terms. Better yet, get your financing before you go into the car dealership.
Bingo. I was just about to say that. You cut me off before I could. I love it. I love it.
That's what
always,
we did with
when you're
both of our
making
boys.
major purchases, get the financing before you even look at what you're purchasing. Know what your budget is so that you can't be oversold.
Exactly. Yep.
Whether it's your home, your car, any major purchase.
Yeah. So there's a nice little snippet that we can put together.
I want
about.
2021 to be the year everyone cruises into a better financial future.
That's what we're here for.
I mean,
So-
we're doing this because we give our time freely.
Yes.
I've offered many times, if somebody calls me up at USFA, there it is. It's
Or at Cruise Credit Consulting.
somewhere behind me. I'm swimming. No, it's back there next to the lion head. It's right there, actually. I know
Right
where
there.
it
There
is.
you go.
I know where it is. I painted it. Well, not exactly, but close enough. So anyway, if you were to call and ask to speak with me, I'll give you my time. Like Tom said, he's a guest. I don't talk to him all that often. He's a friend. He works in a completely different industry right now, but he gives his time freely, and he'll tell you that I'm incredibly generous with my time.
hmm
And so if someone calls me just because they have a question and they don't want to be charged a fee just for an answer to their question, I'm never going to say no. Leave me a message. I will call you back, because information is how we all become smarter. It's how we all become more solid financially, and for our future, and for our spouse, and for our kids, and for our parents, and for everyone else.
hmm
The more you understand how the world influences you, and especially in finance, the easier life gets.
Yep, exactly. Well, this has been a great episode. I look forward to seeing it up and online. So thank you very much, Adam, for all of your information. And like I
Me
said,
and the
thanks.
elves are going to get to editing it probably this evening, and hopefully we'll have at least a preview of it ready for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, you name it. We'll have at least a preview of it ready by tomorrow morning.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Join us next week when we continue to cruise into a better financial future.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, and send your questions. Check out the info below. The email address is questions@cruisingintoabetterfinancialfuture.com.
Awesome.
I'll see you all in 2021. Thank you for being a part of Cruising into a Better Financial Future. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. We'll see you next time. Bye.